I'm Jae Sanders. I have been working on the Seed Exchange. This is my 5th year to help organize it, and I have been a food and farming advocate for over a decade between Taos, a little bit in California, but mostly in this valley. I kind of feel like I work between Salida and Saguache is my zone because we're sort of all in the same valley, same watershed, same food shed. And so I'm very, very excited to be continuing to do this work here, and that now I'm employed by the San Luis Valley Local Foods Coalition, doing a very cool food and agricultural assessment across the whole valley. So if you're interested in that, grab one of my business cards in the back and email me, and I can send you a copy of our report that will be published in a few month or two, pretty soon. But what I want to get into today is this food access model that we've been working on since December. When the Crestone Food Pantry was losing its location, people started scrambling to try to figure out where it could go. And May from the KV HOA, she's a president, she kind of was like, hey, we have space, we have facilities, we've got freezers, and a space we could do this from. And it was huge that May offered that. And that kind of made us realize we can connect, the KV is kind of far from Crestone, but the fact that she was willing to step up and help, made us realize, wow, we could be working together as a whole community, not just the Crestone community over here, and not just KV, and not just Saguache, but all together. So we just started having meetings since December and just invited whoever we thought might be interested, whoever we knew was involved with food. So we, Marge that was managing the food pantry in Crestone, and then Crow and Jules, who are going to be taking it over. Charisse from La Puente, who's delivering the food to the food pantry. We just started organizing these meetings and coming together. Anyway, and that also was very much spawned by Mo, sitting up here in the front row. She helped kind of pull this together. So that's what's happening. And this became a much larger conversation then around food sovereignty, food security, food access for our county, because it is such, obviously it was so vulnerable that Crestone lost its food pantry and there was nowhere for it to go because we don't have a lot of infrastructure out here. So that's sort of how we got here. And we're going to talk about a proactive model for healthy food access in small, rural, and frontier communities. And we are actually considered frontier. We don't have enough numbers to be considered a rural community. We are frontier out here. And so that's this different designation, and it actually makes it a little tricky to get funding then because we don't have enough population to receive certain grants and programs that are offered. So that's something to keep in mind. Oh, and I also want to just say that we're looking for people to partner in this project and to help us build capacity. This is not limited to the people that have been coming to the meetings. We are open to everybody from anywhere to help support this endeavor. So if you're into this, let us know. Oh, I'm going to we have sign-up sheets. Do you see that clipboard? That's all our stuff against the wall. So I kind of touched on this, but a grassroots effort is growing here. I kind of went over all of my notes here. We've met 4 times since December, looking for a long-lasting solution. I think that Eden has done a great job by having the libraries provide food on Fridays, which is huge, but that's sort of this temporary fix to the larger problem. And so as much as we need, things happening, soon for the food pantry to get reinstated, Mo and I and Charisse and this group is really looking at a much longer term vision, longer term solutions, not just what can we do tomorrow, but what are we going to do over the long term. We're working together to create resilient food access solutions. And and part of the goal here is to create these network, funding strategies. So instead of Crestone vying for money for their stuff and the KV vying for funds from the same funder and Moffett doing the same thing, and any community, we're actually wanting to come together to approach funders as a whole county or collective, because we're very willing to work together here. We have such small numbers, we really need to be doing that. This is one of our, probably our second or third meeting, we outgrew the library in Crestone by our second meeting, and we had a bigger space. May offered the clubhouse at the KV, which is a really amazing space. We can fit a lot of people in there. And we've pretty much, on average, had 20 plus people come to these meetings. And it's different people come each time, but this was, just a snap from that day. 33 individual people have attended our meetings. A few of them have only come once, but the fact that 33 people from the county have come to have this discussion was pretty big. And this represents over 240 hours of community energy that is put towards this endeavor. When you consider our meetings have been 3 hours apiece, on average, 20 people are at them, and we've had 4 of them. This is a lot of time that we've spent doing this, and we're going to spend more time doing this. And this is, I think a pretty significant amount of, community energy into this. And the people that have been most active, or the communities, I'll say, have been Crestone. They're working on it themselves. Moffett has been very active. And then the KV has a lot going on already. We're, there's a lot more spaces in the valley that need support like this, but that's just sort of where the momentum is at this moment. But we're very happy to have, other communities building momentum where they are. And these are just some of the people that have attended the meetings. It's not all of them, but I just, put some names up there. Yeah, we're seeking more representation from Center, Hooper, La Garita, Sargents. There's a little bit from Saguache and Villa Grove, but those would be other communities that we'd really like to see some more participation from.
Jae, would you like everybody to put their name on here so you can have how many people attended?
Oh, that's only if you're interested. If you want to, and I was thinking that we could do that at the end, if you've heard this whole thing and you're like, yes, I want to be a part of this. So if you're not sure, don't bother, because then you'll get more emails from us than you will from the Seed Exchange. Some of these issues we face are basically that we live in a food desert here. I have to drive. The closest place for me to buy food is 13 miles away, but that's not the food I want to eat. The food I want to eat is over 30 miles away. That's from the KV, which is right on 17. And dollar store isn't a grocery store. I know you can buy your groceries there, but it's not the kind of food any of us should be eating. And the gas station isn't a grocery store. So it's not, we're talking about healthy, local, whole foods. Yeah, there's not a lot of whole foods at the Dollar General in Moffett. But, only 5 grocery stores in the county that are open 7 days a week. 2 of them are in Crestone, Saguache has one that's open a few days a week, and then their gas station grocery store. It's got some stuff, but it's not really the things that we want. So, we know that there's a lot of space out here. There's a lot of people trying to age in their homes, and that's really challenging for them to have access to food, and that's something we're really, really looking at. And a lot of people want to grow food out here. They want to process it and sell it, near home. They don't want to have to drive to Alamosa to do the farmer's market or Salida to do the farmer's market. So we're really looking at creating markets that are more accessible to our communities. And I know that one sort of happens at Joyful in the summer, and Melinda's getting one kicking off in Moffett this summer, which is going to be amazing. But I'd really love to see, all these communities having a weekly market. So then our producers here can, they could be busy 5 days a week doing different markets just in our county. Would be amazing. So this map illustrates the places that people live are in blue. And, the Bonanza, it doesn't usually show up on a map with a population, but there are people out there. There are people in Villa Grove. The largest concentrations of people in our county, Center is a big one, Crestone is the other one, and then it's Saguache. Actually, I think KV. Oh, I have the numbers here. But there's a lot of people that live in the KV in Mineral Springs, which is right here, and there's no grocery store. So the red dots are where there's food. and the blue dots are where there's people. And we want to populate this with more red dots, right? Whether that's a grocery store, a mobile market, a little teeny pop-up market, or a farmer's market, we really need to figure out how to offer more food to people where they're at, because it's silly for all of us to be driving far for our groceries. The town of Crestone. These are rough estimates, but the town of Crestone has about 150 people. The Baca Grande has 1,500-ish people living there. Casita Park is another place that's on this map with about 200 residents. The KV has around 300 residents. Villa Grove has about 50. Saguache has 530. Moffett has about 106. Center has 1,930 people. And our county is the 7th largest in the state of Colorado. And it has, it's 3,100 square miles. And the whole county's population is only 6,368 people. And that is below what a lot of funders want to even look at. They're like, oh, you're not going to serve enough people with our money, so sorry. And then that just leaves us totally out of the loop for funding on things. So what is our goal? And I said it a minute ago. It's developing a proactive model for healthy food access in our our frontier community by creating resilient alliances, programs, and food production, storage, and distribution. It's, this whole event is about creating food, growing food, but there's this other steps to making it accessible to people, and a big piece of that is storage. We want to create food system resiliency. So we're not dependent on the food pantries. We're not dependent on the grocery stores. We're not dependent on the commodities that are delivered. And we're not dependent on transportation. And I mean, COVID just showed us the vulnerabilities in our transportation systems, our distribution systems in the grocery stores. And that the best thing that came from COVID is that so many people woke up to the grocery store shelves being bare in spots, and so many people now want to grow their own food. And so I want to support people in doing that. And so we're talking about creating infrastructure for that to happen. All the necessary means of it, and we're going to get into all that in a second here. So here's the model. I don't know if I can show you guys this. I'm going to pull this out of here. Okay. So there's multiple aspects to this whole model. So this is sort of our vision of everything that a community could have, but you don't need to have it all. You could just do a piece of this, and that would be significant. But it starts with the production. And really, if you want to be in production farming out here, I feel like it's really important to have a greenhouse to get your starts going in so you can be ready to put stuff outside in June, which is when it's safe. So we've got a greenhouse, the outdoor garden. It would be great if there was an orchard for seeds and or nuts and fruits. It includes seed starts, irrigation, having soil and compost. You're going to need a tool shed, a wash and pack station, and a little composting spot. So that's kind of one chunk of this, right, that could be done, that some communities they have that going on. What you need next is storage, dry storage, cold storage, and freezer storage, particularly if you're dealing with meat. And meat production is something that actually I don't have animals on here, but that's something I'd really like to see going on. And that's part of the thing from the assessment that I just did with the Local Foods Coalition. We kind of heard over and over, and then came out of this co-op meeting, was that freezer storage was one of ranchers' biggest problems out here. They can't just butcher an animal and do anything with it because they can't store it. But if we had freezer lockers, we could be keeping that meat here in the valley. Most of our beef that's grown here, it leaves before it's even butchered, or if it's butchered, like very few people have access to it because they can't store it. So food storage is something that I really want people to be thinking about, solving that problem. Another thing that's important to make this stuff work is education, whether it's, having kids out in the garden, having farm workers, and teaching them how to utilize the system. We are lucky that Crestone has a Neighbors Helping Neighbors organization, and we are now instating it up in the KV Mineral Springs area, thanks to Mary Lowers and maybe Mady Bell and May figuring this out. That's kind of this ancillary piece. It's not exactly food related, but it's about, hey, you need firewood? We're going to find you firewood. You need gas? You need food? You need cat food? So Neighbors Helping Neighbors is really huge, and I think that they're a great way that we can, plug into them to make this grow and to get people the support that they need. So then some other pieces that we need, those are kind of one. Is a commercial kitchen, because it's one thing to grow all this stuff, but if you can't process it and put it away, then you're going to lose it. And a lot of people I know in my neighborhood, which is the KV, are producing food, and they really need a kitchen. And we are so lucky that May has gotten grants, and so we are putting a commercial kitchen in the KV clubhouse right now. We also have a grant for a Wallapini greenhouse. That's going to include tool storage and composting. And so the KV is actually the model I'm going to use to talk about, because we have so much of this going on already. But the kitchen to prepare food in, we could be teaching classes in there. This would be accessible to anybody. I know that May is not about like, oh, just our community members can use this. She's really open. And we just need commercial kitchens to be able to process this food safely, and to be able to market it in a retail space. Another piece of this is food pantry. So that's, so we can have La Puente deliver that kind of food, and we have somewhere to store it. I mean, that was the whole problem with Crestone. They just lost their space and had no space to store this food that was available to them. So food pantry and storage. And the food pantry also, it means it's an accessible space for people to come, park, grab stuff, and put it in their car. It's one thing if it's all in a closet, but it has to be accessible to the public. The slightly, larger vision of this would be, and so also I'm going to say these are all the brick and mortar things. This is like buildings with electricity and plumbing, but as a retail space, because it would be really great if we had, maybe in Villa Grove or right here on 17 or Moffett, some actual brick and mortar place where people could be selling those value-added goods they just made in the kitchen, ready to go sandwiches and stuff. It's so many times I'm driving down 17 and I'm starving and there's nothing to stop and eat. So retail space, and then dining room and community center is a big deal, particularly for seniors. And I know that Saguache is finally building their building out there on 285, so there is going to be a senior center where I do believe meals are going to happen. But and we kind of have this at the KV. We have our clubhouse where people can gather and eat and share meals. But and I think having a community center where people can just get together like this. There's like not a lot in Saguache County. There's nothing in Crestone. We have the libraries, has been a great space, but they're very small. They're very willing, and I appreciate our library district so much. They show up and allow so many things to happen in the community, but they're just pretty limited on space. Joyful's Event Center is sort of the largest space we have out here to do anything like this and to have education or to have meetings. There's Road and Bridge in Saguache, and that's great. But there's not a lot of parking there. But it is a public space that we can use for free for things. So anyway, really looking at that community center that includes parking and it includes ADA accessibility, all that stuff that we are talking about in this model. Another thing that we could really use is office space. I do all this work from my teeny tiny house, and I have to store all my supplies in my storage bus outside because I don't have a lot of room. Crestone Energy Fair, Nick's got stuff piled up in a corner of his house. Like, we don't have storage out here. We don't have office space to work. And if we're going to be, creating economically viable businesses, even little cottage industries, we need printers, we need Wi-Fi, we need a little space to assemble stuff. So that's a really important piece of this model too. And then that leads us to housing, which is another thing that we lack out here. And another thing we really heard in the assessment that I was doing, everyone was struggling with finding labor. And then the related thing to labor is that there's not enough places to rent or buy out here that, that are affordable or that people want to live in. So if we're not addressing housing, we're missing a huge piece of this picture. So that's in there. Another thing that we need for particularly the garden to work is electricity, probably, little lights. We need water. We need parking. And a backup generator. We can't be putting all our stuff in cold and freezer storage and relying on one type of power source. So we're looking at redundancies to keep this stuff operating when there is, who knows what happens. So that's what this is. This is like infrastructural stuff. This is a farmer's market and vending space. If we just had a parking lot somewhere, like the kiosk, everybody know, most of you know, that the kiosk is this amazing space. People could just go park, vend their stuff, and we lost it. And so Melinda is working again in Moffett to create another space like that where people can just go share their wares and, sell to the community. But, having a spot like that I think is really important. A lot of people want to vend, and they want to be small scale. And, we're not talking about some big thing here. We're talking about what people can do to the scale they're comfortable with, and that tends to be small and manageable for them. The other piece that could work really well with all of this is delivery. Until we can build the brick and mortar stuff, maybe we have a mobile market that delivers stuff. And May also has acquired a refrigerated delivery truck and freezer, and that we're gonna that the KV is gonna make available to do this work in the community. Yeah, I know. It'll be here on Friday? All right. Yeah, May's pretty amazing at calling forth what we need and then making it available to the community, and that's so huge. So the other piece that is not going to work, like we could have all this infrastructure, and we do have a lot of this infrastructure. The schools have grow domes. There's some stuff going on, but unless we're paying people to manage this, it's not going to work. Volunteers are great, and we want volunteers, but we're going to need people to manage those volunteers. And so the big thing that, and Mo has said this over and over, like all this work that we're doing in the community is being doing on the backs of volunteers who are housing insecure, food insecure, and job insecure. And so addressing that piece of paying people to do the work. So my vision is that if we could do this in, let's just say, Crestone, Moffett, and the KV, that could be one farmer's full-time job to manage those 3 locations. And they each have a couple of other paid staff that is tending these places and making sure it works. But I really want to raise money to pay farmers full-time. And yeah, garden manager, garden steward, and then we're going to need a commercial kitchen manager. That's a high-level job that, somebody needs to manage those kitchens, food pantry manager. So this model definitely includes, paying people, because we can't just keep asking the community to show up for free and do this stuff. It's exhausting. So this is a hub that could be, located in any community. And there's these mobile libraries that include computer and Wi-Fi. We could have mobile health units that are providing foods and all sorts of other things, medicines. So that's one of the things that could come out of this. This empowers all generations at an intergenerational model for communities. So, I really want, our garden at the KV to be open to kids. These Moffett School has this grow dome, and they don't have no one's stewarding it. They don't have, after COVID, all these, they had to shrink their curriculum to cover the basics, and gardening is not high on the list of what schools are funding. And so that dome is there. Somebody's sort of growing a little bit inside, but kids are not going out to that grow dome in Moffett because they don't have a program. So, and I think that they're really open to if somebody else wants to step in and do that, but having kids out in the garden, having seniors in the garden, and having them working together is really good for all of them. And this is something else we're really looking at is, how do we mix the whole community together to, produce and steward stuff like this. This is also preventative model for addressing diabetes and other sorts of medical crises that can happen from having poor diets. And so this is I'm really excited to, if this were in place, we would have so much more fresh food, and we could be supplementing the food pantry stuff, which is usually, it's usually boxed, processed, dried stuff. It's got shelf life, but it's not necessarily going to be good for your body. We're also, impacting the health of our environment by not traveling so far. If we have these in all these little communities, you're saving a lot of energy by not driving. It's impacting the economy by giving people opportunity for cottage businesses. So there's a lot here. Does anybody have any questions or comments on this while we're here?
Are you looking for?
Wait, maybe, does that one work? Try that one.
Yeah.
Squat.
Are you looking for private greenhouses to be a part of a larger group of greenhouses that you are going to take food from? Because I know, as a realtor, I am connected to a lot of people who buy houses and have no idea what to do with their greenhouse domes. And so I could probably connect you to, at least in Crestone, at least 3 or 4 decent-sized domes that if someone were to come in and with a group and grow stuff, maybe they gave some to the homeowner and then they take the rest of it for the community.
Yes.
That could be a really
Yes and yes. And there are a lot of grow domes in Crestone. There's a lot of people growing a little bit of food out there, and if anybody's willing to work on this community effort, then yes, I would love to include them.
I guess what I want to say to that is that could be a micro business. I know that in Boulder they used to have people who would farm the hell strip. I don't know what it's really called, but between the street and your house, there's that part that you'd have to mow, and people would farm that. Yeah, that's why it's a hell strip. And that could be the same thing, right? People say you can come and rent, or you can grow in our grow domes, and then they have their CSAs because they're managing it, and then you give the homeowner something. So that, anyway, it could be a private or entrepreneurial situation instead of a community effort.
Thanks, Cherise. So, our communities are holding space for an aging population, and this hub supports the improved life outcomes for everybody in this model. So this is a little bit of what's come from the meetings that we've done, and I'm going to use the KV because there's so much momentum and we've got so much stuff happening there. But in our meetings, we realized that Crestone has some things, and we have some things, but we also have needs. So we had everybody make a list of the assets that their community has, and then a list of the needs that they have in order to make, something work and viable there. And this is part of a sheet. The other half of it will be on the next slide. But, we're looking at the demographics. What's the location, the population, a little description about that area. The key organizers and volunteers, who's involved, who's making it happen, who's doing the work. What are the services that are being offered right now? May does welfare checks on people weekly out in the KV, because there's old people out there that aren't leaving their homes, and no one's going to know how they're doing except that May shows up at their door every week. And this is a thing that we need probably in the Baca and probably in Moffett and in Saguache. So Neighbors Helping Neighbors affiliate, we just got that going. We're in line to serve meals to seniors with the Area Agency on Aging. Once our commercial kitchen's complete, we'll be providing meals out of our clubhouse. And we have had a we'll have a food pantry running in the soon. We've been offering commodities, but we're in line to have a food pantry too. Yep. Yeah. We've had we have just upgraded all the electrical stuff at the KV. It took like a year because of distribution and supply chain issues, and we've had a grant for a year to do a lot of this stuff, but like, you know, you got to address all that like very underlying boring stuff of infrastructure, but we are up there now. So that's the top half of that sheet, and here's the bottom half. The assets we currently have is this Wallapini greenhouse. We've got the hole dug. We've got scoria rock in place that we're going to put into bags to insulate the interior walls. We've got telephone poles and metal framing to do the build out. And we've got, I don't know if the polycarb is already on order, but she's got a source. Yeah, we just have really to the polycarbonate to order and then to assemble the whole thing. So that, but we're, you know, on track to do this. Again, we have a kitchen in the clubhouse now, and we have got new stainless steel equipment, and everything is right there ready to go, and we want to demolish the current kitchen and put in this new one. So that's, and yes, we've got this refrigerated freezer truck that needs a little bit of repair, but that's on the way too. So this is, you know, part of our assets. We have received some grants to do this. The fully funded outdoor gardens, greenhouse, and food pantry, partially funded tool shed, commercial kitchen, and ADA bathrooms. Our bathrooms are, we've got 2 bathrooms in there, and we are getting them upgraded to be ADA compliant, which is really cool. And our vision is that community members have a desire to grow, process, and offer local foods, as well as have access to foods closer to them than Saguache or Salida. We want to provide for not only KV residents, but our nearest neighbors in Mineral Springs and Ewing Ranch, and the ones that are just like sprinkled along 17 over here around Joyful. And we have, I didn't even know this was in here. We do have tennis courts, but we have ADA access to our pond for fishing. That's amazing. I didn't realize that. And a desire to have more recreation, expand the clubhouse, a basketball court, soccer field, playgrounds and walking paths, and a dog park. So let's see. The KV HOA is the model for how to create food access, is dramatically improving for the quality of life for its residents and outcomes beyond just feeding its folks. So yeah, I would love to see this sort of thing happening in all these communities around here who, you know, have a population, but there's nothing else there. And we have blank sheets of this that you can take right now and like fill out for whatever community you live in. But there is already a Crestone group and a Moffett group that have really dialed this in. And we have also examples of this to hand out. This is a picture of a greenhouse actually in the Baca that I've worked in a little bit. So this is just an illustration of like, this is where you start your stuff. Start this, you know, about now. So by June, your plants are ready to go outside. This is a garden I worked in Taos. Actually, I lived here and harvested fresh arugula for my dinners every day from this garden. And this is what this is like a 25-year-old established garden. It doesn't look like much is going on right there, but it was kind of early. But it's amazing to be able to walk to pick food for your dinner every day and just have super fresh, delicious food. And then, you know, the next step is like you're harvesting and you're taking stuff to market. And this was also from the place I lived in Taos, where we had 50 fruit trees and probably 100 tomato plants. And I was able to, you know, way more than we could process or eat. So I took it to the markets and I sold it. And it says, you know, organic Taos grown there. This is what I was doing. And when I couldn't sell all the tomatoes at the market, I'd take them to the restaurants. And the restaurants, at least around Taos, were happy to have local, fresh food to put in their salads, to put on their pizzas. So this is just a little illustration of like that cycle of food production. And those were, peaches. Pears, peaches, and tomatoes. But we also grew so many things. So where do we begin? We have to look at the totality of the situation. Oh, would you use the microphone? We're recording this, so I want everything in the mic so the people watching this later can hear it.
I would just love some clarification. Just a minute ago, you said there's a group in Crestone. Do you mean the town of Crestone or the Baca Grande POA?
Neither of them. This is not related to any other group. So this is, I mean, who's in here? Matey Bell. Talk to Matey Bell. Yeah, there's like,
Who is that? The Crestone area?
It's anybody who's living in the Crestone area. Crestone's like relating to that area.
yeah. Yeah, so this is the question, yeah. It's anybody in Crestone or the Baca that want to participate in this are welcome to help participate, but yeah.
It has more to do with where you would go to get your food, you know? So if you live on County Road T, 5 miles out of town, you're still probably gonna go there.
Yeah, yeah. So she just said if you live on County Road T, you're probably still going to Crestone to get your groceries. But the Casita Park has a contingent growing. Here's a Casita group right here. And that's you know, if they could be doing that there, they wouldn't have to drive the 10 minutes to Crestone to get their food. They could be producing it right there for the 200 people that live in Casita. So it's really, yeah, whoever wants to join this effort, you know, sign up and we'll hook you up with the people in your community that are already doing that work. Yeah, we're connecting with the stakeholders are us. The stakeholders are the people that are going to benefit from this and that are affected by this. So we want to keep connecting with these groups that haven't shown up because we just, you know, we're kind of tight up here. You know, we all know each other, but Center's a little far, Hooper's a little far, La Garita's got a really small population, Sargent's is way out there. But yeah, we really want this to be, this is a vision beyond what most funders have done. This is kind of beyond what a lot of businesses do. We're really trying to look outside of conventional models and create something that's going to work for our specific area and location. And yeah, we're going to have to work across multiple agencies, public and private, nonprofit, and, you know, for-profit to pull this off. This is a really big vision we have. Yeah, and we want to leverage assets across the entire county when considering capacity building and funding outcomes. So yeah, the supplemental features of success, I touched on this earlier, but it's having paid people. You know, it's unfortunate that funders want to fund the greenhouse and the implements, but they don't want to fund the management. And so this is something we're really going to be pushing is paying for a garden manager, paying for garden staff, food pantry managers, having volunteer managers. Volunteers don't do well if they don't have structure. Co-op managers, bulk buying is something we're kind of looking into also. Community space kitchen managers, affordable housing, and some subsidized long-term office space. So housing and food infrastructure plus those paid positions, this thing won't work without all of that. Oh, so this is sort of who's been involved so far. Our fearless leader, May, me, Mo, the Moffett Food Pantry has shown up to our meetings. Charisse has come to all of them, I think. La Puente is on board to help us do this. Neighbors Helping Neighbors, the Northern Saguache County Library District, the Baca Grande POA, you know, we're talking to them. We want them to be a community partner. They really should be. So if anybody's got a little elbow into them. Succeed, we've presented this to multiple Succeed people at various times, and they seemed very on board, but they, you know, could be some, I think they have a lot of ability and capacity to help push this along. The Local Foods Coalition, we've presented this to Liza, and she's been like, yes, keep working on this. We'll help you however we can. Area Agency on Aging, we're talking to them. I don't think, is Monica here? Nope. but we tried to get Monica here today, but we're talking to her. Then there's Heart of Saguache and KV, that they have done a lot of work and with the KV, and so Lori Vigil did come to one of our meetings. And then there's the schools. We haven't totally plugged into them yet, but I totally anticipate that this model could work really well at the schools. They already have a grow dome. They tend to have public space. They're already accessible. People are there 5 days a week. So schools are kind of like the low-hanging fruit as locations that this stuff could happen at. Possible funding partners. I'm not going to get into this too much, but these are the first group of funders we want to approach with this presentation, and then we're going to go to them and ask them what they think we should do next, to get funded, and if that's create a really solid business plan or to apply to a grant they have. This is what these are who we're looking at. So yeah, the bigger picture impact. This is a really, this model will create fresh local food options, jobs, and strengthen Saguache County families, community, and livability. This model supports seniors. It supports youth. Saguache County, and we're hoping that we can move a little bit beyond social services and, create more value in the county for the people that live here. It's going to improve health outcomes throughout the state and creating a model that could be, spread throughout the United States. We're working, right now in Saguache County, just kind of because that's where we are and that's where this need and grassroots thing initiated. But I really can see, having this solid model and taking it across this whole valley, because this whole valley has a lot of food deserts and need around these types of things. And people are really into growing food out here and really want to be able to have that little cottage business from home. So, and it works for all of us by creating food security, housing security, and employment security, which a lot of us actually lack. And, so this is the last slide. Our next steps are identifying leadership in locations that haven't been identified, but also the ones that are forming. Like, who's really going to head this? Because I don't want to do it. I want to work in my community. I want Moffett to have their champion. I want Crestone to have their champion. We come together when we need to, but they're off doing what their work that they need to. I can't hold all of it. We're going to continue to identify the assets and needs of these communities, identify an organization to steward this project. Whether it succeed, maybe it's the San Luis Valley Local Foods Coalition. Actually, the more I think about it, that might be a really appropriate steward of this. And then present it to funders and ask for their suggestions with the real goal of getting funding from them. But yeah, I think it was Max that said, if you want money from a funder, ask them for their advice. And if you want advice from a funder, ask them for money. So I love that, and I'm going to always remember that. But that's my last slide. And so I guess who in here has come to one of these meetings that we've had? A few people. Leah's hand's barely up. Mady Bell, do you have something to say? Come here. I can't get this one. Or you could, use that one. This one doesn't go very far.
Okay, there's, I hope it's working and I know how to use it. Just a couple of things I'd like to highlight that maybe we haven't spent as much time on as we might. And one is that we already have private individual gardeners, especially in the Crestone Baca area, where we've had kind of a focus on food gardening for quite a while. And I know it's true in other areas of the county. And I think some way to bring those gardeners together and to begin working with a larger population base could be, that could be a focus of someone's attention. And then another thing that I think maybe we could focus more on is education of younger people, because I saw a little bit of that in your presentation, but I didn't see a lot. And, I'm 81 now, and I'm not going to be around forever, and most of us are not. So this is a skill that we need to pass on to the kids and to the youth. And so I'm hoping that, we can look at how we can incorporate that into the model more, and that also might give us some other funding sources if we're thinking of it in that way. And the other thing I wanted to say as you were speaking, you were saying that this is kind of a new thing for us to present to our funders who are used to having larger population models to look at. Yes, we are a pioneer county, frontier county, but we're not the only one. And a lot of frontier counties around the country are being ignored because of that. So if we can make that also a focus of some of our fundraising conversations, that this could be a new model for some of these foundations who want to, maybe expand their influence, but not necessarily in the inner city. Okay, those are my 3 things.
Thank you so much for those things. Yeah, we didn't, I breezed through education. I don't have that educational curriculum worked out yet. But, part of having a community center enables a place for people to meet and teach. And, the Rio Grande Farm Park in Alamosa is a great example of a place that you could do so much, but only so much because you were outdoors the entire time until they built their education center. And now there's actually that place that you can be in the winter learning things, preparing for summer. And so, the weather is harsh out here, and that's why we need a little more brick and mortar infrastructure so we can actually, be at a educational thing and focus because we're not freezing. And I know that I breezed through it, but I would really love to incorporate the schools in some sort of creating a program and an affiliation with the schools so the schools don't have to hold the garden project. I want the community or this thing to hold those garden projects at the schools and keep them together. The schools are kind of maxed out with their capacity, but I absolutely want kids in the garden and think it's highly important. Mo.
I just want to expand on a couple of things that she said. One, this presentation is kind of designed for people who have really busy lives, right? So we have like a limited amount of slides and we're trying to move through a lot of energy. The asset sheet that you saw that was in there that's moving around, the goal is to have those be a packet that then could be digested beyond the presentation, right? And that's the spot where we're really working to capture all the incredible things that are going on in our communities that are invisible. So just to elaborate, when we talk about senior food delivery, that is actually happening all over the place, right? Moffett is checking on seniors. Crestone is checking on seniors. Villa Grove is checking on seniors. KV is checking on seniors. So this is happening in this volunteer way that is hard to capture. So those are the kinds of things in the asset sheets that we're really trying to capture. And again, the biggest most important thing is that because we're so small, the goal is, again, to leverage all this incredible energy that happens to have a funder see it. Because now we're talking about our whole county, right? So instead of kind of having, Moffett, which I did get approached, like, oh, can you write a commercial kitchen? It's like, you know what, but you have more needs than that. And we are really asking funders to look at us instead of this little tiny piecemeal way that's very hard for folks to actually manage, get the funds, find the fund, the writing of it, then administrate it, blah, 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 blah. A lot of things about trying to get that money. It's like, deal with us as a group. Here's the numbers of our space. The other piece that's a really big deal is that in the work that I've been doing on the funding end of it, we are also asking agencies to work together, right? So again, that's a radically different model, right? So USDA runs a bunch of programs. CHAFA runs a bunch of programs. And again, because we're so small, it's like, oh, here's all the interconnected needs. We don't have the capacity to run after each of these grants, and we're often kind of knocked out in that process anyway because of our numbers. So this model is trying to address all of that in a really tight way and kind of seed a really different idea. But again, the asset work that we're doing with the worksheets is kind of the big piece, right? Like that's what we can't get into the into this thing to kind of, otherwise we'd be like 2 hours, right? Because the more we've been having these meetings, the more we keep finding out about all the work that happens, right? And then how do we help everyone who's doing it?
And yeah, I like that you reiterated that asset sheet is like, what is the work that like we can't see that's being done? Like that we learned that Jeff in Villa Grove, delivers food to people's houses periodically. Like that's one of those invisible things that we would never have learned about. And I also want to say we don't have this all figured out. This is like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. We are relying on the community to really bring all their ideas, all their, experience and give me a name of somebody. Who should I talk to? I don't know. I just happen to be like giving this presentation today, but this is not me or Mo doing this. We need the help from everybody to make this all work.
Right, and I just wanted to elaborate on what Mo and Jay are talking about when we're talking about these different assets. One of the things that we want to leverage when we have, what we want to do, right, is we want to kind of unify our voice so that we can be heard and that we can delineate what is our most pressing needs instead of a funder coming in saying, well, this is what we think, or this is what our feel-good thing is for this year. And when we can go and say, we've done 180 hours worth of volunteer work, that's our sweat equity, right? Because again, if we're all these different insecure, right, doesn't mean that we don't have lots to offer. We do. But we need to get people to see differently what our needs are because we can see them very clearly, but they don't. And so how do we manage that, and how do we, again, because a lot of times the narrative that has been put upon the people here in the Valley is generational poverty and lifestyle diseases, and those things are true. Of course they are, but we live in a place that has unique needs and has a unique environment, and we're not less than because we don't have a bunch of numbers. Like, look at that. If we've all put in, in McDonald's in Denver, you can get $18 an hour to work at McDonald's. Okay, well, if we all put in 180 hours worth of work, then we can go to a funder and say, look, actually, we've put in $17,000 so far. Can you meet us with that? And so that's why we're approaching you, because you guys can also think of these things, right? Like, actually, this is another part of our equity that we can offer. So when we can own our stories, it's easier for us to be able to say, well, we will concede to that in a grant, or we're not going to, and this is how we're going to have this relationship with these larger entities that come in. That's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Did you want to say something?
One thing about getting kids involved, even like from kindergarten up, once the kids have this spark of delight in their eye about learning how to grow their own food and being self-sufficient, the parents get involved too.
Nice point. Does anybody else have any comments, questions? Want to get involved in this project that isn't already? Raise your hand. One person. Gosh. All right, great.
Everybody's already involved, right? Yeah.
I guess so. Yeah, a lot of people are involved. Well, we're actually also probably a little bit past 2 o'clock. I didn't think that would take me that long to get through, but so we're kind of done. But there's a sign-up sheet somewhere. If you want to do this, or it's in the back, perfect. There is the KV's example of an asset sheet. There's a few blank asset sheets. And put your name on the thing, and we will invite you to the next meeting we have. Actually, the next thing we're doing, I think, is talking to CHAFA, the Colorado Finance and Housing Authority. Mo and I are just going to present to them online probably, or maybe in person, but we're going to, go to them and show them this and ask them what they think and, how they could fit into this, what they'd like to see from us, what more we could do to actually go apply for a grant. But yeah, the real impetus of this thing is like us all working together as a collective to apply for the funding that we have been missing to get this stuff done. And I'm just, you know, for a decade, I've been wanting to create food infrastructure. And then all of a sudden, this might be the vehicle where my little fantasy gets to be fulfilled. So I just really am excited about this, and I really hope we all keep showing up to do this work in our communities. So thanks a lot, guys.